So without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to Eric Duchamp.
All right, let's jump in. I'm going to start you off with a picture and a question. So what I'm going to ask you to do to start off is close your eyes. Go ahead and close your eyes. But don't worry, the hand holding and the singing only starts after lunch.
Now?
We're going to let
Now?
you warm up. No, not now.
Okay.
But close your eyes for a second. And I want you to use your imagination. I want you to imagine 12 months from now, you and I are sitting in this room together again, and we're reflecting back on your most significant achievements in 2016. It's been a phenomenal year for you. You can see how much you've accomplished and grown as a leader, as a professional, as a father, a mother, a friend. What is it that you're celebrating as you conjure up that picture in your mind? Can you hear it? How are you feeling as you look back over the year and say, man, we really nailed it this year? What are you most proud of? What are the things that come to the surface? Now, let's do another picture, keeping your eyes closed again. Again, we're 12 months into the future, and this time you're sitting all by yourself in your office, and you're reflecting back on the past year, and you're scratching your head wondering, what the hell happened? It's an all too familiar place, like you feel like you've been here before. Things didn't quite go as planned. You didn't get the traction you'd hoped for. And the goals, many of the goals that you had set out at the beginning of the year remain unfinished. You can hear almost even now that inner voice nagging you and reminding you that you didn't measure up. How do you feel now? What does that future look like? What are you most frustrated about? What do you find most discouraging in that image? And what would you give to go back and do it all over again? You open your eyes now. Let me ask you the question now. So that's the image we want to put before us, those two contrasting pictures. But the question is, are you playing your best game? Currently, right now, in your life, in your personal life, your professional life, are you playing your best game? And if not, why not? That's what we want to wrestle with today. See, deep down, we believe firmly that each of you are meant for more, and I think you believe it as well. Most of us, as we go through life, know that we are capable of more, capable of being more, capable of doing more, capable of accomplishing more. But the knowledge of our potential, compared to our current performance, can often be something that makes things worse. We know we can do better, and we're not. And so that kind of eats away at our confidence and can erode our results. In all of our work with business leaders and owners, and as Trevor said, I've been working with people for a very long time, most of my life. Since the age of 17, I've been involved in leadership in one way or another, always thrust to the front of the room, often against my will. And in that journey, learned really something I've become firmly convinced about, that the number one reason why we don't reach our full potential, there's a lot of reasons, but the number one reason, we don't really get clear on what we really want out of life. We don't slow down enough to really understand, what is it that I want? What's the kind of life that I want to craft for myself? We get wound up, think about it. How fast are we moving every day? Right? We move at the speed of light, don't we? We're going from one thing to the next, often confusing activity with productivity. We figure if we're kicking up enough dust, we must be doing good. It's what I call the placebo effect. Keeping busy and keeping active and keeping moving makes us feel good temporarily, but in the long run doesn't always get us where we want to go or get us the things that we really want. And although you've achieved a measure of success, and that's why you're here today, maybe you're not as focused as you know you should be. Maybe your attention is divided, and you find that as a result, your results are diluted, not as potent as you'd like them to be. Maybe in many ways you feel like a winner who's losing on some fronts, or perhaps many fronts. Something's not quite right. You feel like maybe something's holding you back. Deep down, you know that what got you to this point probably won't get you to where you want to go. And so something's got to change. Something's got to give. A new game needs to be played. Our goal today is to provide you with some fierce questions and some powerful concepts that will help you reflect deeply on where you are right now and where you want to go, and then give you the tools and the resources to help you get there. To make sure at the end of the day that first image you conjured up in your mind of a successful year, and you and I having that conversation 12 months from now, that becomes your reality. Does anybody know what January 20th is? Are you familiar with Blue Monday? Do you know what this concept is? This is most people don't know what this is. This is the most depressing day of the year. It's a really sad day, and it's become known as Blue Monday. It's about 3 weeks into the new year when people realize that all of the hopes and many of the resolutions and the promises they made to themselves are already on the rocks, have already become shipwrecked, and they've made very little progress towards. Blue Monday. Where depression apparently is at its highest, it's a really sad day. Today, thankfully, it's January 27th. It's not Blue Monday. But our goal is we don't want to just make promises to ourselves here today, but then leave here and not make any significant changes and go play the same game we've been playing. We hope to change it up for you today so you can have your best year ever. Let me give you some tips on how you can maximize your day today. As we're spending this day together, number one, put aside all distractions. Trevor's already spoken about that, so I'm not going to go into it any further. Just important, you really put all your energy into what we're doing. I'm going to ask you to park any preconceived ideas you have and keep your mind open. Mind's like a parachute, only works when it's open, right? So park your preconceived ideas. Most of you said something today as you were introducing yourselves. I like to be in that, put myself in that place where I'm not comfortable, where I'm being stretched, I'm being forced to change or think about new things. So that's a great space to be in your mind. And I know this is a big ask. Some of you know me, and some of you are just getting to know me. I'm asking you to trust me. Put yourself in my hands. I've done this a lot. And my goal is to guide you today through a series of questions and reflection and conversation, all designed to help you look back on the end of today and say, man, am I ever glad I set this day aside and invested in myself, because I've got a level of clarity I didn't have before. Participate fully. Engage in the day. And by that I don't mean, share everything that comes to mind or feel like you need to share stuff that's personal. We're not asking you to do that at all. But what I mean by it is participate fully. Engage with the questions. Engage with the process. Engage with the people around you as best you can, because the more you do that, the more you'll get out of our time together. And finally, push yourself beyond any limits that you have. Today's a day to put it all on the line, to invest in yourself, to invest in your future, so that 2016 is a year you look back and say, man, that was an epic year for me. And that's our goal for today. As we head into the day, we're going to start with talking about why goals don't work. And I'm going to ask my partner in crime to kind of lead us through this section. He'll be with us this morning, and then I'll be guiding you through the rest of the day. Let's talk about why goals don't work, Trevor.
All great presentations. Let me turn around slightly.
Why is it you think goals don't work? Or do you disagree with them?
Let's dig into this a little bit and start to unpack goals, because there's a problem with goals. Andre, you said it really eloquently. When we say everyone is obsessed with goals. They set their goals for the year, they set their goals for performance, other people set goals for them, all kinds of things. But there's a disconnect, because the vast majority of people, and we can all look back into our own experience and say, wow, I set all these goals, I'm nowhere close. Or it fizzled out, or it collapsed, or I didn't get the result I was after at all. So why is that? So let's start to dig into it a little bit. I like Googling things. So I started to write set your goals, and I didn't even get that far. I got set you, and it went right to set your goals, which is very interesting, because it means this is something that gets searched regularly. People are, so I, again, didn't even get to the goal word, and it was bringing up goals as the first one. And then I thought, set yourself free. So this is kind of interesting in terms of the results. There is a notion that...
The third one's interesting.
The third one, we'll get to that in a minute.
I guess figuratively, that's fine. Yeah.
What I didn't see was set your goals on fire. Set yourself free. And so I was looking and saying, is that by... if you start to accomplish your goals, you have a sense of freedom? Or is it by setting our goals, if we let that go, do we get a sense of freedom? I thought that's kind of interesting. Set yourself on fire. Well, so there's a literal version. We're not advocating that. So for the record, please don't do that here. Okay, anyway, but the notion of, those times where you feel that energy and that power and that fire inside, sometimes that fire goes out. And part of this is about how do you reignite that so you're back to that sense of purpose, that sense of clarity, that sense of focus that will drive you. And it was interesting. We have a client, Eric and I were coaching with a little bit ago, and the message was, listen, you have so much energy, you're like fire. And the problem is
you're like unconstrained fire, and you are burning everything around you. Your relationships, your goals, everything, your business is on fire. If you put fire and you harness it in an engine and you control how and when that fire burns, you've got a really powerful engine, and you can go great places, you can lift huge things, you can accomplish all kinds of things. So here's the question: are you prepared to put the systems and processes in place and the behavioral changes in place to become an engine, or are you just going to keep burning everything that comes close to you? So there's two versions of fire. What do you do with it once you've got it? And then set you free. We've talked about freedom. That was kind of interesting. Here's what a goal really is. It's a wall. And most people are surprised by that, because they start to think goal is my sense of achievement, it is a place, but it's not. And this is where language really is important. So when we go back to the original word goal, it comes from the word Gaul in the 1500s, which means a boundary or a limit. So when we started here, we set our goals, did you just say, here are the boundaries and limits I've set for myself this year? Because that's what it is. You know, it's a very interesting notion, an obstacle or a barrier to hinder. So we've got this other version of goal that has emerged over time, and as the language has changed, that has shifted how we perceive things. But if we're setting a goal saying all we're doing is reaching a boundary or a limit, to Scott's point, all we're doing is creating a to-do list. Because if it's something we can already do, if it's something we're already capable, it's within our boundaries, within our limits, it's not much of a goal, it's just a to-do. A goal is something where we need to go through a barrier. We need to change who we are. We need to destroy a limit that we have in our mind about what we're capable of, about what we deserve, about what's possible for us, in order to actually transform what's going on. Does that make sense to you? Now, in some ways, I'm interested in timing of things. So time is very important to me. There's kind of 4 versions of time. We can talk about that later. It's not this course. But it's often interesting to see how long we've been talking about things and about how language shifts over time. So have people heard about priorities? Yes, of course. Do you have a set of priorities? Maybe, yeah. Did you know up until 100 years ago, the word priority was only singular? There was no plural version of it. A priori. You could only have one.
Now
It's
we
like
have-
I have a flock of sheep, right? Like you could only have one, right? It's so we've changed this language to suit the fact that we didn't understand a word. So instead of changing our behavior, we've changed the language around us. And so this word goal, in some ways you can't blame us for not understanding it all that well, because it hasn't been around for long. So what I did was I said, okay, here are 10,000 dots. I did this myself, by the way. And if each dot represents a year, we've got 10,000 years. And humans have arguably been around for 200,000 years. So here is history of the human race. And we've been talking about the word goal that long. So there's just a little bit right there. So you can see why maybe we don't understand this word so well. Other words that show up back here consistently across race, nation, and place are I, you, we. It's very interesting, and in that order. So to your point, Andre, this notion of together starts with I, but the progression as we grow over time, then I recognize you, but then it's about we. And so the notion that we can do all of this on our own is proven throughout the history of humanity. That is not the trajectory that we're on. That's not the trajectory we're on. So most goals aren't goals at all. We just come up with things, and they're to-do lists. And most of them are like, here are my goals for the day. Call John, send an email, write an article, all those things. And I get to the end of the day and say, look, I accomplished all my goals. Wow. Those aren't goals, right? Those are to-do lists. And even if we sit down and say, we're going to create a new event, we create new events all the time. So just creating another new event, it's, you know, it's a to-do, and it's an important to-do. I won't take anything away from that, but to start to say, how do we look at it differently? How do we start to transform it? We had a great conversation about an event coming up April 14th. Mark your calendars. And John came up with a few ideas to say, can we break that? Can we do that totally differently? And we all looked and went, yeah, we can. And so we're going to break a few things. And we think this will be good. And that's pushing us a little bit. So that, to me, is breaking through something. There was a barrier there. We had a picture of what this thing looks like and should act like. We said, let's break it a little bit. Let's go a little bit farther. Let's try something new. Does that make sense? Okay. Because if you are creating, if they're smart and measurable and attainable and relevant and time bound, those are all, you know, we see these all the time. Everyone here knows I hate this thing. Not in and of itself, because it's just out of context. Because these are all to-do list things. If it is attainable already, not a goal, to-do list. And your to-do list should be specific and measurable and relevant and time bound. But if it's already attainable, if it's something you can already do, if it's write a proposal for a new project to a client, okay. It's a bit of work and it takes some time, but this is not transforming us. It's not pushing us beyond what needs to happen.
One way to, I guess, say it is that if it's attainable, it's not transformative.
We need to do what we think is a little bit beyond our reach.
So, Trevor,
Yeah.
just on that point, at what point do you consider something not attainable then? Or how do I word that differently?
Right,
Anything
right.
can be attainable with the right level of effort, right?
It's based on where you are now and what do you need to become. So all of this will come back to who do you need to become in order to reach that. To say who I am now, that is not attainable, but who I am going to become, that is absolutely within my reach. And once you're there, then you set a new set of goals. So I had a guy I worked for once, and he said, Trevor, you always try and bite off more than you can chew. I said, well, of course I do. And he said, well, why? I said, how do I know how much I can chew until I've tried to bite off more than I can chew? I don't know the limit of my chewing. That sounded weird. Don't write that. So there's a compulsion to push beyond what I think I can do now. And where we normally do it is in straight out effort. I'm going to put in more time doing more of these things, as opposed to transforming ourselves or transforming the role or the job or the task to say we're going to push it beyond. There's a different way to do these things. Right, and when you see those people, right, Elon Musk is a great example. Love him, hate him, whatever the case is. He's reinvented the vehicle, right? He's got his Hyperloop that he, apparently has started construction. He's doing things that people say, he's sending rockets up and catching them as they come back down, right? He's taking things
successful,
Yeah,
but he's on.
he got one
He
just
got one.
recently.
Okay.
That's right. Just last week, I think it was. It took a few tries, a few $1 billion. But if you have billions, it's for trying, right? Like that's what I think it's
Why else
for.
would you have billions?
So we look at those people, Richard Branson, saying, I'm going to reinvent that. That can be different. That experience is all wrong. I'm going to recreate that. It's those things that start to transform us. And it takes courage, it takes clarity, and it takes drive. And more than anything, it takes vision. So goals fail us regularly. Vision always finds a way. When we have got a clear sense of purpose about this is what I'm here to do, this is what I must accomplish, this is what I must become. When we have that sense of vision, we've got envision literally a picture of the future we're trying to create. With that, then start setting your to-do list. Start to identify what are the goals, what are the barriers that have to be broken down, whether they're barriers of yourself, of your team, of your organization, of your clients, of your industry, of whatever that is. What are the barriers that need to fall in order for that vision to come to life?
Yeah.
Today, we're going to take you through the exercises so you can start to identify what are the barriers that need to fall. What are the true goals you need to accomplish in order to bring that sense of vision that you have inside of you, to bring that to life? And it does not have to be save the planet. It does not need to be save the oceans. And we've got a client who that is her goal. And you know what? She's going to do it. because there is no doubt. I'm kind of looking at Shauna and Eric because they both know her pretty well. Her sense of vision is very clear. Her sense of passion is very high. The problem is she's got a bunch of to-do lists. And so we're reorienting her a little bit. We're helping her discover what needs to fall, both within herself and her organization and in the industry, in order for her to accomplish that. But there is no doubt if she tries this plan and that doesn't work, she'll do that one and that one and that one, and she will not stop.
And that's a perfect illustration of exactly why, to your point, well, I thought goal setting was good, but we're talking about it's not working for most of us. And it really, when I answer the question why goals don't work, it's because people aren't going deep enough. We're not getting clear enough about what really matters. And that's what a vision is. When you have a vision, it's not something that would be, oh, it'd be nice if this became a reality. No, it has to become a reality. Goals, if they don't go deep enough, as soon as what you envision the plan in your mind, I want to lose 25 pounds and this is how I'm going to do it. The first problem or roadblock you run into, you get stuck. Or it doesn't take long to get you off the rails. But if you've got a vision of what your life looks like as an individual who's healthier, who's eating better, feeling better, able to play with your kids and not get all tuckered out, right? I've got a vision around this now. Even if my plans don't work out the way I had hoped, I'm going to find a way to make it work. Because I've got an inner motivation that is driving me forward that a goal in and of itself typically doesn't have. Does that make sense? And a perfect illustration, you tell Lori's story, yeah.
Goals are usually shoulds,
Yeah.
and visions are musts.
Must be. Yeah.
Right, so we end up shooting all over ourselves.
Nice.
We need to be clear on this must, and we don't accept substitutes. It gives us a lot of flexibility in terms of how we get there,
Yeah.
but if we don't have that clarity around it, there's no there.
Mm-hmm.
So when we think about goals and visions, a goal, we look into the future and we say, I want to do that by then. And it could be even within the day. By the end of the day, I want to accomplish that. A vision lives with us, in us, moment to moment. It is us. And that's why this is about transformation. When you create that sense of a picture of what you're trying to create, Eric and I have one around Rhapsody that is very near and dear to us as a group, but also individually. So this is where a personal vision of what we're trying to accomplish is manifesting itself in an organization. This is part of the how. So we've got a whole series of targets for ourselves and activities we're engaged in and things we're developing, all of that, and that'll come. It's coming. We're making that happen. You get things come out of the blue, you adapt to, and all of those things. But I'll tell you, that vision of what we're trying to create is right here, right now, in every moment. It is very, very present. And when you've got the clarity of what you're trying to create, think to yourself, what I'm trying to create, and if you're holding that close all the time, all your decisions are going through that. So these choices I'm making right now are getting filtered by how is this getting me closer to my vision, because I must get closer. What is that? Does that make sense? Okay. Here's a guy with a vision. Which vision do I mean? Go to the moon. We're going to put a man on the moon in 10 years. That's interesting. There's a goal. Talk about, well, we haven't quite cracked that yet. They're feeling some competitive pressure from the Russians around the space program. And so then he comes out with this cockamamie goal. Just a cockamamie, you don't get to say that enough. To say, we're going to put a man on the moon in 10 years. So I think a lot of blood pressure went up really high among those who were tasked to deliver this when he said those words. And so they turned to this guy, one of my favorite people, who, by the way, really looks like my grandfather. Well, except that, my grandfather's dead. But so is this guy.
Son now, right?
Do you know who this is? Buckminster Fuller, or Bucky. He did the geodesic dome in Montreal for the World Fair. Okay, that thing was his. He had whole new views about mathematics and geometry and all kinds of stuff. Fascinating guy. So they turned to Bucky to say, by the way, the president wants to put a man on the moon in 10 years. How would we do that? So he came up with what he called, and what we now commonly call, the critical path. No one used that word before, but it's your critical path, and we use it in project management all the time. And the critical path had 1 million steps in it. So great, we can put a man on the moon, no problem, take 1 million steps. Quick thing though, 750,000 of these steps, we have no idea how to do yet. Build 3-stage rocket. Anybody done that?
Nope.
Sort out telemetry without gravity in space. Anybody done that? No. How to keep a man alive for an extended period of time in space. Develop shielding to protect man from radiation in space. Anybody got? And no one? Okay, we'll add that to the list. It went on and on and on. So they had 750,000 goals, because the other 250,000 they already knew how to do. And I think that was mostly ground control. So it was an incredible moment, but it galvanized a view, that vision, where he said, this is what we are going to do. And other people said, damn it, you're right, we got to do it. And part of that is because he said, because those damn Russians are doing it, and we've got to beat those Russians. So there was a motivation that he was able to tap into in terms of the why, where for other people, it didn't become yeah, we should really do that. That'd be good. That'd be great. It wasn't that. Everybody's like, we got to do it. We've got to put a man in the room because that'll show those Russians that we are this, and it's going to have all kinds of other benefits as well. Okay, but they didn't know how to do it. So the point is not, listen, I've got a vision and a very clear plan, so we're good to go, because I'm thinking that's probably more to-do list like. But to start to say, we need to become more. The United States needed to become more, and it created an entire new industry and a new set of relationships, a new set of technologies, and all of these things in order to make that happen. We're talking about vision. So let's talk about what we see. So what does the eye see? It's kind of an interesting question. What does the eye see? The eye doesn't see anything. The eye just passes information to the brain. The eye does not see a thing. All it does is got this big nerve there, and it captures light, and it turns it into electricity, and it just passes it along. That's why the optic nerve is so big, because it's passing so much information to the brain. The brain sees. And what's interesting is, people say, well, no two people see things the same way. That is so absolutely true. It's true at a level we don't quite get. It is so true we miss the truth of it. Because what happens is, the messages that come through our eye go into our brain, and then it gets all mashed up with everything we believe to be true, with all the scripts we have, with all of our biases and prejudices and limitations and hopes and dreams and aspirations, all of those things, and that's what we see. So some people might step onto a stage of 1,000 people and see absolute sheer terror. And other people might step up there and say, what an opportunity to serve 1,000 people. They're both looking at the same thing. So what we see, our sense of vision, that must, isn't just about what are the opportunities that are ahead for my business. It's about what's possible in me, and also how do I transform that vision? Because there's a problem with our vision. Our vision sucks. So if this black bar represents all of the light waves that are out there, it's not to scale. I'll show you the scale in a minute. The eye can only see this little band here. So our vision is limited. And so I look at this stuff, and when you get to 10 to the third, and so you're going, okay, I'm writing zeros on that side, and minus 12, so I'm writing a whole bunch of zeros on that side. So you got a range of 10 to the 15 in terms of the range. It's huge. So I look at that and go, okay, abstract concept, I get that. Let's make it real. So here's a way to look at it. So this is the Mississippi River, which starts way up here in Minnesota and comes all the way down into the Gulf of Mexico. So it's 2,340 miles long. If that was the available light, our eyes would be able to see 8 inches of the Mississippi River. So our vision, we say, oh, I've got a grand vision. I'm using 100% of my capable vision power. It's 8 inches of that. I think people that we look at, that we see as leaders who become very successful, are finding a way to expand that 8 inches to see something we're not. And what they do is they help us see it too. And in some ways, it's almost delusional. They see something that none of the rest of us see, but then they bring other people into their delusion, and all of a sudden, two people see it, and a third people. A Hyperloop? Come on. What are we, Jetsons? Honestly, I'm still waiting for my jetpack. That was promised on the back of every comic as a kid. I got my sea monkeys. I got all the other stuff. No jetpack. But it's about bringing people into a shared sense of vision, I, you, we, so that we, all of a sudden, people start to come together. So again, you think about Kennedy. It was impossible that humans could leave Earth. No, not only is that not impossible, we're going to go put a man on the moon with a flag, and we're going to do all of that. He expanded the vision of what was possible. So, maybe people weren't just seeing that 8 inches of what was possible. Maybe they're seeing 12 or 16 or 5 feet. For us, for you, as you're setting your vision, you have to ask yourself, am I going to limit it and just say, here are my boundaries of what's possible for me. I'm not going to transform, but within what I'm currently capable of, here's what I'm going to do. Or are you going to say, that's not enough, I want to see more? Because you know what? It's all out there. The question isn't whether or not this light is happening or not. It's all happening without you. So how do we make sure that we can see that, bring that into our lives as well?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. Everything's created twice. Once in our minds, and then in the world. So how we think about this, the language we use, right? When we actively think, so there's two kinds of thinking. One is like you just sit there and crazy thoughts will just come into your head. Crazy thoughts, right? Snake wearing a vest, rolling a donut. I don't know, right? Those things don't make any sense. So thoughts there's one set of thoughts that just, I know, it's a funny, there's a, my gift to you. If that's all you leave, right?
I didn't want to see that in the answers. I really didn't.
How do they wear a vest? They don't have arms. That doesn't make sense. There are some thoughts that just arrive. And here's the thing. We are not our thoughts. We're not our thoughts. We're only the thoughts we hang on to. So some thoughts come in and we grab onto it for whatever reason, or we think we should. That becomes our identity. But here's the thing. With those thoughts, you can just let go of them too. And some people say, oh, I can't let go of that. So if we've been told since we're young, you're a bad person. People say, I don't know, I've been told that my whole life. How do I let it go? You know how you let it go? Think about cooking with a cast iron fry pan, and you've been cooking for a while, and you know when you pick it up and it's really hot? Okay, and so you're holding it, you don't go, I've been holding this for so long, and it's the truth, and they've been telling me, ever since I was little that this would hurt and this would be bad. We don't think it through, we just go, pop, right? And we just let it go. Other thoughts, we can actively think. We can create thoughts. We can create it. And we create it using language, which is why language is so important, that we know actually what do the words mean, that we're actually, we say things like we know what they mean. But to get more specific about them. Because here's the thing of everything that gets created. If this is what you create in your mind, this is what you get. So if your vision looks like this is what you get. You have fuzzy thinking and a fuzzy vision, you get fuzzy results. And people go, I don't get it. I don't get it. So there's a process of continuing to get more specific about our vision, to get more detailed about what does that look like? How does that manifest? What has to play out? What has to change? To actually test our vision. Not to say, oh, maybe it was a bad vision. I shouldn't come up with visions because, I never did well in school, all of those things. There's a timer in here somewhere.
Yeah, I think you did that slide.
I did that slide. Because there's a problem with it, and not the slide. There's a problem with our vision, and it has to do with the fish, with the goldfish. Because this goldfish is better than you at one thing. Two things, really. It can stand underwater longer than you. It has a longer attention span. So the latest tests show that a human being has an attention span of about 8 seconds. And a goldfish has an attention span of 9. It was all out of the Microsoft Research Center.
Really?
Yeah, and they've been testing it since early 2000. In fact, our attention span has fallen from 12 seconds to 8.
Oh, I meant for this goldfish.
Yeah.
Not for us.
Oh, no, that's
You're not shocked about the stats for us.
they tested the fish too. Like they've got a baseline for it. I don't know how they do that. So how are you going to create a vision when you have an attention span of 8 seconds? Sorry, I'll give you a minute just to divert and come back. Okay, so now how are you going to create a vision if you only have an attention span of 8 seconds? This is where there is a real courageous requirement to focus and to block space and time and truly block it. Not just I'm going to reduce that window that has my emails going, or I'm going to, move my phone from ringing to vibrating, that those distractions are still there, but is to actually give time and space to create your vision so you can identify what needs to fall, what needs to be eliminated, what needs to be transformed about you in order to accomplish that. Otherwise, you're never going to get where you want to go. Does that make sense? All right, let's talk about how you do it.
So the image that you just saw a minute ago, thank you, Trevor, the blurry picture that was on the screen, right? Often that's what's going on in our minds. It's fuzzy. One of the ways you turn it from that fuzzy picture to something crystal clear is it has to pass through, we say that your thoughts never become clear until they pass through the lips or the fingertips, until you discuss it with someone else and have to have a conversation about it, or you have to write something down to describe what you're seeing up in here. Your thoughts remain unclear. They remain sort of jumbled. There's an act of interpretation that happens where you have to force your mind to turn that thinking into something more concrete, understandable for somebody else to be able to either read or understand the conversation. So today, we're going to do a lot of that. There's going to be a lot of writing. There's going to be a lot of conversation. And the point of it is to turn that blurry image into something a lot more clear. How many are familiar with the Be, Do, Have? Have you heard this principle before? Okay. Goals are all focused on what I want to have, typically. Right? That I want to be healthier. I want to meet these financial or hit these financial targets. I want my business to look like this. Oftentimes, they're related to things we want to have, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if that's as deep as we go, we're going way too shallow. And this is where we're, as I said earlier, because we don't go deep enough. As soon as our plans don't work out the way we had anticipated, we find ourselves getting off the rails and getting stuck. In order to have these things that we want to have, obviously we have to do certain things. And that's another layer that's still a little bit too shallow. I need to do the following. For example, what is the most common New Year's resolution?
Lose weight.
Lose weight. By bar none, even better than stopping smoking, everybody commits to losing weight.
The second one is stop drinking.
Right.
Why would you do
What?
that?
Why the hell would you do that? Everyone resolves to lose weight. It's the most common New Year's resolution ever, right? So if you want to, let's say that losing 20 pounds is what you want to have. Let's just say that was the goal, right? What are some of the things you'd have to do to have that?
Join the gym.
Okay, join a gym.
Eat properly.
Eat properly.
Stop drinking.
Alcohol doesn't help. It's kind of metabolism.
You can do that. You can still lose weight and drink.
It's true. It's true. But there's a number of things that just make sense. I'd have to eat better. I'd have to join a gym. I mean, the entire fitness industry is built on a model where they expect 80% of their people to never actually show up. What a business model. 80% of my clients I'll never have to actually service. Because they'll buy a membership and they won't show up, but they feel bad about not showing up, so they don't cancel that monthly charge on their credit card, and they let it go month after month after month, knowing that people feel badly that they're not fulfilling this resolution. Do you see how, right? But all they're focused on is do and have, okay? If you want to go deeper, you have to figure out the kind of person you need to be to do those things more naturally, to then have what you really want. You gotta go right back, dig deep enough to think, what kind of person do I have to become? And this is why we talk about transformative goals. And you were alluding to it earlier when you said, really if you're able to do it now, it's not very transformative. It's not going to change you. It doesn't require much of you. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to create a truly inspiring vision for your life that ends up giving you what you want to have, dig deep. Dig deep and think today, even as we're discussing, as we're reflecting, as we're writing, even on breaks, as we're just having conversations with one another. What person do I need to become in 2016? Right? To do the things that will get me what I want to have. Be, do, have. You're going deeper than just the average person.
As we're talking about resolutions, here's a great model that I like to use with my clients about goals and success, right? So we set a goal and because we want to get somewhere, okay? But it often looks like this, right? We know the stuff we should do, so we just talked about that. Our goal is we want to lose weight, so we know we need to eat better, we need to join a gym, we need to perhaps drink less. Maybe that one's negotiable. Arguable. Stuff we should do, right? And if we do those things, then hopefully we'll get to where we want to go. But doesn't it often look more like this? Right? Where we start on this journey of transformation, we start making some progress. Usually, the New Year's resolution to lose weight, the first few days, perhaps after, we've eaten too much for Christmas, we probably don't need to eat for a few weeks because we're so full, right? So we do okay for a few days, but it's not long before we get off the rails. And what do we end up doing? We end up doing what is in our habits, the stuff we actually do. We go back to our internal wiring around those issues because we haven't thought through deeply enough a true vision of why I want this change. And so it's easy just to go back to the way things are. You ever find yourself driving somewhere and you're so used to taking a certain path or a certain direction, you find yourself pulling in front of what you thought was your destination? This is not where I wanted to go. You sort of went on autopilot, you followed a predetermined path you've used many, many times, and you weren't even thinking, is that it? That just happened to me? Okay.
Yeah, with
Ooh.
Validation.
Yeah, validation, right? That's the stuff we actually do. But those are those predetermined paths that we end up taking that get us in trouble. And this is where coaching or a supportive environment and community can really help us because they help remind us of the stuff we need to do to get to where we want to go. They help to remind us when we're falling back into those old habits, right, that are going to get us off track. And they keep us really focused on the kind of person we want to become, that we've committed to ourselves to become. For years, made a commitment to get healthier. It's not until I got a coach working with me on a regular basis that I actually did it, right? Because I needed support. I need help to do this. Because anyone left to ourselves are going to go back to the way things are. Take a big rubber band. If you're like me growing up, rubber bands were really versatile. And usually not for keeping documents together. Usually for causing trouble in class or, right, trying to take somebody's eye out or something like that, right? But take a really big, let's take a bungee cord. You want to talk about a dangerous instrument. A rubber band with metal hooks on either end. This is an awesome invention, right? A bungee cord. But you ever take a bungee cord, imagine if you're holding it taut, right, so that it's tight, and then somebody grabs it in the center and pulls it out and holds it as far out as it can for, let's say, 10 minutes, okay? As soon as that is released, what happens? Snap. Right back to shape. Now imagine that bungee cord being held out in that position for like 3 months. Let it go. What happens? Does it snap back to its original shape at this point? Probably not. All right? What's happened is now that it's been given more stretch. So matter of fact, if nothing else changes in the position it's being held in, if you leave it pulled out long enough, that bungee cord will expand. And it's the same for human behavior. Oftentimes, we're looking for the quick fix, and we just snap right back to the way things are. If we want to change, we need help being held out in this position for long. Okay? Does that make sense? We often talk about above and below the line type behavior, leadership behavior versus victim behavior. I often ask this question of my clients when they start, explaining why something's not working out, and I'll ask them the question, is this leadership behavior or victim behavior? And the difference is very simple. Above the line is facing reality, solving problems, taking responsibility, showing commitment, and then taking the right actions to get the result you want. Victim behavior is making excuses, pointing fingers, playing the blame game, helplessness, right? I'm helpless to do anything about this, and selfishness. And as we look at the changes that we want to make in our lives and some of the reasons that are holding us back, we have to ask ourselves, am I being a leader in this area of my life? Or am I acting and playing the victim? And there's no judgment in that. This is human behavior. Right? We fall prey to this far too much. And we don't take control, and as a result, or take responsibility, we put the blame on someone else or something else externally, and we stay stuck. There are certain things we shouldn't own, that we are not responsible for, that we cannot change because it's in somebody else's court. But we got to make sure that everything that is in our control, that is in the balls that are in our court, that we're taking responsibility for those. Otherwise, we're giving away our power. Right? There's a great quote, and I forget the author now, but it says, when we blame others, we give up our power to change. When we take responsibility, we create a force that can lead to great change. Laying a bit of foundation, and we're going to get into some exercise with you in just a moment. I often like to also ask this question: are you playing to win or playing not to lose? Just think about those words for a second and the difference. Are you playing to win or are you playing not to lose? What's the difference between the two? Isn't that the same thing? What's the difference? Somebody tell me.
Playing not to lose is just, to me, is like status quo, keeping above the flow. Win is to strive forward to there is nothing other than win.
Right, right. The other is almost like a protectionist. I'm hedging my bets.
Yeah, I'll take the overtime loss and take my 1 point and go home.
Right, right.
Use a hockey analogy.
Right. But I want to play to win. And if you want to play to win this year, again, some of the things we've got to look at is, number one, you all talked about this. You talked about being pushed outside your comfort zone. Right? That comfort zone, when you hear the phrase comfort zone, what are some phrases that come to mind? Give me some words. Let's play word association here. Comfort zone, what comes to mind?
Well, safe.
Safe.
Cozy.
Cozy.
Couch.
Couch. Cozy couch. You put those together really nicely. Netflix, yeah. Right, chill and Netflix. Doesn't that become like a whole thing now?
Some Doritos.
Yeah, that Doritos. Oh, hey. That fits nicely with that whole weight
I go
loss.
to Scott's
And
house.
drinking.
Status quo.
Status quo. Average. Mediocre. Right? When we think comfort zone, we think, well, we know that place. We're comfortable there. That's why it's called that. But nothing great ever happens here. This is where mediocrity rules, and where average is the order of the day. If you're going to move past that, the first thing you've got to do is move into what we call the learning zone. Even this morning, we're laying a bit of foundation so we're all on the same page. As we start working through the exercises today, we kind of are coming at it from the same perspective. But the first thing that changes is learning. It's when we start to see beyond the 8 inches, right? And we start to learn that there's more out there. It starts to pull us forward into something. Isn't that true? You start to say, oh, there's more than I realized. To move out of comfort, you've got to add to your learning. You've got to begin to expand your thinking. Now, have you heard the phrase knowledge is power? You've all heard that? How many think that's true? Okay? Yeah? It's true to a degree. It was actually that Sir Francis Bacon actually coined that phrase in Latin, okay, when he coined it, although he was French. Whatever.
He had knowledge.
He had knowledge, right? when he coined that phrase, we're talking the 18th century here, this is when only the wealthy had access to information, or education, or books. So was knowledge power? You better believe it. Only the very few people had access to it. Is that still true today? No, knowledge is readily accelerated, right? I mean, with the internet now, I mean, it's crazy. You can access anything. The problem is now not getting to knowledge, is where do I start? It's overwhelming knowledge. So knowledge only gives you power potential. In and of itself, it's not power. It's acting on the knowledge you get, which is the next zone, the application zone. That's where true change begins to really happen now, where I'm learning new things, my mind is being expanded, and I'm taking action to try to apply it. I can read all the books I want about learning how to ride a bike until I actually get on the damn bike. Great story. Somebody just recently told me at one of our business ethics breakfasts. He came and told me his father was a famous lawyer here in town for many, many years, and it passed away a couple of years back. And as the kids were going, this is his son telling me the story, as they were cleaning out his house, right, and kind of packing some things up and dealing with all of that, which is a normal part of losing someone. They found throughout the house everywhere books on running. Like he had books, like it was unbelievable. They must have packed, he said, about 3 or 4 boxes full just about running. The weird thing is, he never ran a day in his life. But he was the most educated non-runner you'll ever meet. He was fascinated by it. He probably could talk to runners about running in a way that they didn't even like. Oh my God, I didn't know that. He never actually put on a strap on his shoes and hit the pavement. Interesting. Application is where the genius is. So when you're pushing yourself, you got to push yourself out of comfort into learning and expanding the mind, and then taking that knowledge and applying it day to day. Now, if you push yourself too hard, any coach will tell you, you're going to hit the panic zone. This is where now, think about this from a sports perspective. I mean, John, you've been in that realm for very, very long, right? If you're going to get an athlete to really perform, you've got to teach them. They've got to learn new techniques. They've got to learn better ways of doing what they do, how to get faster, how to be stronger, how to take out the other guy, right? Whatever sport we're playing. And they not just learn it, they got to apply it.
Yep.
Okay? But if you push any athlete too hard, too fast, they hit what's called the panic zone. We all do. And this is where we're feeling overwhelmed. It's too much. It's too fast. I can't keep up. All of us want to push ourselves, but it's that fine line. As soon as you hit panic zone, if you get in there for any length of time, you don't just regress back one level. Guess where you go to? You go back to your couch and your Netflix, right? You go back to your happy place where I know this may be mediocre, this may be average, but I know this place. This is getting scary for me because I'm in a place I'm not familiar with. But I can tell you this zone right here is where optimal transformation takes place. And the key is to get yourself there and stay there as much as you can. That's where you're changing, you're growing, you're maturing as an individual, and it's really, really powerful. So let's talk about, well, there's the arrow. You don't want to fall. Don't fall. That's sad. All these animations. All right. Do y'all have something to write with? Do you need to?
The irony of
I got it.
the lawyer not
Here, I got one
being
here.
able to leave hands that are on the desk downstairs. Can't possibly.
Let's talk about some of the reasons why people don't achieve their goals and achieve their vision. But now we're going to shift gears a little bit. We've been laying some foundation work here. I'm going to get you to do some writing and some thinking. One of the big reasons that major hurdles to any greatness is fear. And I love this acronym, false expectations appearing real, because fear, it really is that. Most of the time, it's the expectation of things taking the worst course possible. Right? It's the worst case scenario dictating your actions now. Afraid that that's going to happen. Fear is a terrible thing. And what are some common fears that people have? Not you, but other people. There's common fears. Failure, flying. Yeah, some people are terrified of flying. I flew with a buddy of mine to Siberia. It was a 33-hour journey. And part of it is we had to fly on Aeroflot, the Russian airline. That's internal. Now, if you fly Aeroflot International, they have to maintain certain standards. Not so much when you're within their borders. And he was a white-knuckle flyer to begin with, and his seat was broken. So for 8 hours, his seat kept just doing this, right? And he'd have to bring it back up. And he never let go. His knuckles were so white and so great. So fear of flying is very real for some people. Fear of failure is another one. What's another one? Public speaking. More people are afraid of public speaking. They fear that more than that. They'd rather be in the box than the one giving the eulogy.
Join us on February.
On February 21st, we actually have a public speaking summit.
Thinking outside the box.
Exactly. What are some other common fears? What about fear of success?
Yeah, that's that playing not to lose.
Right. I feel a little bit out of control now. If I really start succeeding,
But why would somebody fear succeed?
yeah, I see it all the time. They're afraid of the unknown it brings. It introduces a measure of, so here's my life now, and I'm barely hanging on now, or I'm barely managing perhaps all of these moving parts. And if I succeed at an even greater level, does that mean now my life's going to ramp up in complexity, in stress, in pressure?
It's losing control.
Losing control is really the fear behind that. Loss of control, fear of the unknown.
It's also with fear of success is loss of identity.
Mhm.
Because for people who've been told you're not good enough to succeed, you don't deserve it, you shouldn't reach for more, that's for other people. And people get this all the time. Those messages become part of their identity. And to let go of that, to succeed is to let go of all of that. And they end up torn between this thing which I kind of want but don't have a clear picture of it, but I think it would be better, but I don't know for sure, versus this pain which they know and are familiar with and have come to adapt to, it is actually a more difficult choice than you would think would be obvious.
Yeah.
It's an incredible thing, and we see it with clients.
Yeah.
And to help them start to realize they can rewrite those things. And that's why very much our tagline is, you know you're meant for more. It's
It's not just more stuff or more money, more purpose, more sense of self, more contribution. You're meant to give more, become more, discover more. But it's an amazing thing, Andre, to see how many people are afraid to succeed, and will do things along the way to stop themselves from doing it. They'll get close.
Yeah, I've read that often,
Yeah.
you know, like fear of success, and
It seems
I just couldn't
counterintuitive,
understand.
right?
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Here's another one. How many are familiar with imposter syndrome?
for sure.
Are you familiar with that phrase? What does it mean?
Like being found out that you're like a fraud, or people finding out who you are because you don't.
You
think
really
you
are. Right? In life and business, we often have to operate at a level that is beyond our current level of actual experience. We have to somewhat, you've heard the phrase, fake it till we make it. And if most people, including our staff and our teams and perhaps our most significant others, really knew the self-doubt, the lack of confidence, the fear, the doubts, all those things that are going on inside our minds sometimes, they might be shocked. And so imposter syndrome is like, holy shit, I hope they never find out what's really going on in here. Because on the surface, they think I've got it all together and I'm doing okay, but yeah, not so much. So fear of being found out. Fear of the real you being surfaced. There are all kinds of fears.
Sorry, Eric. Just the challenge of the fake it till you make it is people feel like they never make it, but they're only ever faking it.
Right.
And so they keep doing, they do the activity in order to have, but they don't be, they don't become, they don't feel like they've become the version of that person who's authentically there. When we have that sense of authenticity, and sometimes it's just letting go and say, oh geez, maybe I am there. So it's not actually the behavior that's out of the whack, it's our perception of ourselves in that situation. There's a disconnect. But if you just feel like you're faking it always and never making it, it's a terrible place for people to live because they live in fear of others finding out that they're not who they think that person thinks they are, right? Like it's such a roundabout, confusing version of events, but it can be devastating to say, what if people find out I'm not a real leader, or I don't really know this stuff? And so that's where getting really clear and really honest with ourselves about what do we got, what don't we have. This is the going above the line to say, I'm going to take control of this, and I'm going to make sure that I am authentically being that person and becoming that person.
Yeah, absolutely. All kinds of fears that hold us back. We could carry on just listing different ones. But what's really important to ask yourself is, what are you afraid of? And you know what? You know this. And so I'm going to ask you to take a moment right now. I'm not asking you to share it, because you might be afraid of that. See what I did there? But I'd like you to take a moment and write down, what am I afraid of right now? What are the fears that hold me back? Might be one, or might be a couple. But take a moment and just write them down. Remember, clarity doesn't come until it passes through the lips or the fingertips. There's something powerful that happens. You say, well, I know what it is. Write it down. What are you afraid of? What fears have held you back in the past? What fears are holding you back right now? Maybe one or several of the ones we mentioned. Maybe we didn't talk about it, but it's very real to you. And you start teasing it out a little bit more. Look at what you just wrote on the page, and then ask this question: what if I wasn't afraid of that? What would be different? If I didn't fear that, what would be different? What would be different in your conversation, in your thinking, in your relationships? If you didn't fear that in your business, how would that change the picture? Perhaps the third question, if I wasn't afraid, what would I do right now? If that wasn't an issue for me, if I didn't fear these things, what action would I take right now? Perhaps it's been something you've been holding back doing because of the fear. What would you do right now if you weren't afraid of that? Again, I believe in the power of writing things down. I believe in the power of articulating it, but this is where you use your own level of comfort and judgment on whether or not you feel like you can share it. But they're oftentimes the most powerful moments come when someone articulates. Actually, this is what I wrote down. without going into tremendous detail, this is what my fear is, and here's what would change if I wasn't afraid of that. So if you feel like you want to share something, I certainly want to give you that opportunity. But it's not, we're not going to force you. You might have been afraid that I was going to force you. The imposter one is so common for leaders because the very role of a leader is to call people to a life larger than your own. You're invited, especially if you have a vision and a dream about something pretty cool, right? That's bigger than the average person will experience. You're inviting them into a greater experience that you're still on a journey toward. You're not inviting them to that place from, hey, I'm there, I've arrived, now do as I did. You're saying, here's where we're going, right? And you're inviting other people along, and they're looking to you for direction and support, and you're not there yet. And yet, you know, it's the old adage of the captain of the clipper ship, you know. Wind comes along, blows him off the bow, and he's dragging behind the ship in the water by a rope. He says, I must hurry up and catch them, for I am their leader. Right? This sense of always feeling like I'm not quite there yet, and yet I'm calling people to live a larger life and be part of something cool. So that imposter thing, a lot of leaders struggle with that one. A couple of things. One is on the word driven. We hear it often, and we often admire, you know, this person is so driven, right? I have an issue with that word. Part of it is because we're big on language here. Language does matter because every word has a meaning, and the meaning translates into then behavior and the way that we interpret the world around us. And when we talk about being driven, what else is driven? Well, cars are driven. Do they have control over how fast they go or where they're directed?
Not yet.
Not yet. Yeah, they're getting there, aren't they?
2 years out.
Well said, well said.
But even in the cars that are self-driving, there is someone behind the wheel, whether they're actually doing anything or not, that are telling that vehicle where to go, how fast to drive, all of that. The car is neutral in the equation. And that's when I hear people saying they're driven, I never interpret that in a very positive way. What's driving you? It's an external force. It's applying pressure to you to behave and do certain things. And for people that are saying, I'm trying to achieve that inner peace, I'm trying to find a place of, I don't want to be that guy. Like, I don't want to, I can relate to your story. My dad was the same way, right? And part of his success came from that, but at a price. Asking yourself when you look at those fears, a great technique is to ask yourself, why am I afraid of that? And then answer. Then ask yourself again, well, why is that? Right? And then answer. And then take that third answer and again say, well, why is that? It's a technique that is actually pretty powerful to get clarity on just about anything. We call it the 3 why technique. If you take the time to say, why is it that I'm really afraid of that? You keep digging, you might find out that the real reason is something completely different. But it's going to give you a level of clarity around it. Another great technique is to do the best case, worst case, most likely case approach. So if you're afraid of being found out, right? What's the worst case scenario? Play that out. What's the worst case scenario? People in your sphere of influence find out you're not quite the person that perhaps they think you are. What's the worst case scenario? Okay? And paint that out. What's the best case scenario? Paint and play that out. And then finally, what's most likely going to happen? Because most often, worst case, best case, those are not what happens. Most likely is what happens. And if you can live with most likely, why are you afraid? It helps normalize it and actually nullify the fear. Because you're looking at it, it's like what you said earlier, I'm afraid people won't hire me. And then, when I look at it, 90% of people I see down top do hire me. Right? Right. That's the most likely case. Okay? So fears, we all have them. We're going to keep moving here, okay? Another reason that people get stuck and don't achieve their goals and follow through is what we call self-limiting beliefs. It's what Trevor referred to earlier as those scripts that play in our minds that interpret the world around us. And the funny thing about scripts is they often play in our mind like recordings in the third person. But it's self-talk. It's what you're telling yourself and what you program yourself to say to yourself, in given circumstances around certain issues, a script then automatically kicks in. It's like when you call somewhere and it kicks on a voicemail, right? It's just going to play that message. And it's not something we choose to do, it just begins to happen. And as Trevor mentioned, it comes from primarily here. This is probably the most influential time of our lives where scripts and beliefs about ourselves and the world around us get kind of bred into us, right? And programmed into us. You can leave your family. Your family never really leaves you. You carry these beliefs with you for the rest of your life, good, bad, and ugly. Belief system, many people have some kind of faith grid or spirituality. These beliefs influence then the way we believe, what we believe about ourselves, and again, believe about the world around us. Our experiences can shape us. Again, really, I'm talking about really great experiences and really negative ones. They really begin to shape what we believe. And finally, our workplace. We spend more waking hours in the workplace than anywhere else. And so our values, our interpretation of the world, heavily shaped by this as well. The thing is because these scripts are automatic and many times are not very empowering, they can really hold us back. And unpacking this is pretty important because the scripts that are holding you back need to be identified and replaced. Now that may sound, yeah, I need to do that. Yeah, it takes a bit of work. It's not as easy as it may seem. But so I come from a Catholic background. That's what I was raised in, and spent many years in the church. So I understand the stories of that world really, really well. And there's a story of Adam and Eve in the garden. Do you all know that story? Even if you didn't go to church, most people know about Adam and Eve. Okay, the apple, the snake.
Wearing a vest.
But if you remember the story, and I'll play this, it's a great story. So God creates Adam, puts him in the garden, and before he creates Eve, he has him name all the animals, right? He brings all the animals to him, and Adam's the one who gives them all the names according to the story. So he attaches meaning to all these things that come his way. He attaches meaning to it. Eventually, God says it's not good for man to be alone, and creates woman. He kind of it was a trial run the first time. The second time he got it right. Is how it should probably read. But the point of that story is my mentor talked to me. He says, when you think about that, is in a way, depending on what you believe, the thing about the human race and human beings is we have the ability to create meaning. We don't create things out of nothing, but we create meaning. So experiences happen to us, and we create a meaning. This happened because that. We create an explanation in our minds. That makes sense? We interpret what's happened, and we attach a meaning to it. So I was told my whole life, so someone might say, I was told my whole life by teachers that I would never succeed. Therefore, right? I grew up with a dad who, good dad, provided for me and for my family, but he was a very busy professional. And I remember even going on vacations, and he would spend half his vacation sleeping. Usually the vacations were right after tax season. And we'd go on these 2-week vacations, and he might emerge like day 10. Like he would sleep most of the time, he was exhausted, he was so worn out. So I remember these vacations, and I can remember points where Dad and I played on the beach and did certain things, but it was only near the end, right? And I attached that to a bunch of other things that happened in my life. And because of those experiences, I came to believe that I wasn't important, right? That I didn't matter. So that plays into then my quickly putting the mask on someone else. I don't matter. See? So these beliefs play themselves out in all kinds of ways and are shaped in all kinds of ways because we attach meaning to things that have happened to us in our lives. Now, that's the bad news because we often attach the wrong meaning. The good news is if we can create meaning, we can uncreate it and create a new one. And often overcoming these negative scripts is to look at them and say, are they really true? Is that an accurate meaning? First of all, is it an empowering one? And is it accurate? And if not, how do I need to look at this differently? And start then making that deliberate choice to unpack those and recreate new ones.
Can I take it one step further?
Yeah.
There are things that are true. So we can look at ourselves and say, I failed that test, so maybe I'm not a good student. And you can say, did I fail the test? Yes, that's true. But there's a distinction between true and truth. So you can take the behavior of someone and say it's true they did this and this and this and this and this and they're all bad things. Is the truth about that person that they're a bad person? Not necessarily. So sometimes we need to look beyond the factual true of the case to say, what is the underlying truth of this? So, if we use the story of your father, all those things you say are true. Is the truth you're unimportant, or is the truth that this is how your dad lived his life and it wasn't about you at all?
Right.
And so it's really important to say, yes, let's acknowledge things that are true, that happen, that are factual. We're not saying wipe those things away, but to look beyond that to say, what is the truth of this situation, and let's live into that truth.
Yeah.
Does that make sense, that distinction between the two?
Thank you.
Because we're not about erasing the past, saying,
Of course not.
no, I did pass that test, I am a genius student. No, but there is a space to rewrite these things.
That's right. It's creating that new meaning, attaching that new meaning. So now when you remember those memories or you recall those things, those experiences, a different meaning is attached to it. One that empowers you as opposed to erodes your confidence and your ability to move forward. So I want to take a minute, just like we did with fears, and think of the scripts that play out in your mind. You've got ones that are probably very powerful and help you and are very positive. We usually don't have to dig too deeply to identify the ones that are not so much. What are the negative scripts that are playing out in your mind, play out on a regular basis, that hold you back? This is that self-talk, the meaning you attach to experiences, to yourself primarily. You say, what the hell does this have to do with planning my best year ever? Do you remember Be Do Have? We talked about that earlier. What kind of person do you need to become? These scripts, the negative ones, will keep you from being that person. Don't worry about wordsmithing this, just write down what comes to mind. The negative scripts that play out in my mind, the negative meanings that are holding me back.